Hi there, everyone. So today we are first story chatting with publishing experts. Um, it is part of a Creative Careers event series, and we are on a Zoom call. Our panel today is Amy Aker, editor and director of Bad Betty Press, James Reynoldsson, product owner, writers and artist, and Bloom Through Publishing, Jess Haycox, publicity manager of Harper North, and Will Mackey, senior program manager, New Writing North. First Story is a creative writing charity that supports young people to share their stories in their own words. And I was previously one of those young people, and I can just attest to how much of a great job they do that. Um, Today, it's run by the Young Creatives Program, which is supporting progression opportunities for young writers for First Story and beyond. And that is run by the lovely Rose Kondo, who is also here today helping with this. We are funded by the Arts Council England, and the themes of today's chat is about publishing and it was chosen by First Story alumni. So we will hear from our panelists and we'll open up a Q&A later, which alongside automated captions, you can find alongside the bottom panel at your thing. So if you click on your screen or if you're on your mobile, it will say Q&A and you can pop in your questions and we'll go through some of them later. So I've got about four questions that each of you can answer, and I'll sort of try and direct it at people to avoid everyone like talking over each other. So, can I start with so the first question is, what were some of the first steps into your role? Can I start with Amy Aker, if that's okay?
Hi Daisy. Hi
Hi.
everyone. Yeah, absolutely. My first steps into publishing. Bad Betty often gets called a DIY publisher. We're a very small team. Well, it's basically me and Jake Wildhall. And now we've grown to more. We've got a couple more editors. We've got a finance officer. But when we started, it was just the two of us. It was 2017, and excuse me, we came to it not coming from a publishing background at all, but coming from the poetry side of things. Both Jake and I have been writing and performing for a long time, and we'd both run open mic nights and hosted various events. So we had quite a wide network of friends and community in poetry. I'd also worked in copywriting for a long time, so I had experience of, I suppose, kind of editing and also of project managing kind of creative projects, working with designers. It was kind of a lateral step, but I think I brought a lot of kind of transferable skills to it. But we didn't really know what we were doing at the start. We kind of made it all up, looked at other small publishers and what they were doing and what we could learn from that, and just gave it a go. And we started with pamphlets and with reaching out to people we knew who we thought, oh, I'd love to read a book from this person. And because we came from originally more of a performance background, we knew a lot of poets that were maybe hadn't yet branched into the publishing side of things, but were very kind of well known and had an audience in the kind of live scene. Um, and so we published a few pamphlets and then our first kind of big project and our first Arts Council funded project was an anthology on mental health called The Dizziness of Freedom that came out in 2018, and that had like 52 contributors. And when you look at the list now, it's kind of crazy. Like it's so many superstar poets, and some of them were already like really big, and some of them were kind of on the rise at the time. So it's got like Raymond Antrobus, Mona Arshy, Joelle Taylor, Rachel Long, but like loads and loads of poets that we just absolutely adored, and that we thought, well, we'll ask them, and they can only say no. But actually, loads of them said yes, so we were really delighted. And then because we got funding for that, we did a tour and we did events around the country, getting different contributors to read, and so that I guess built a bit of heat under the book and also under us as publishers. And then things just kind of grew. And then we kind of continued focusing mostly on pamphlets. And then in 2023, we got a larger grant which we applied for with a view to kind of expanding our remit a bit, focusing more on poetry collections, which enabled us to grow as a press, to have more of a trade presence, and also to offer our authors more of a kind of long-term commitment that we could be with them as their careers developed as well. And we started an imprint called Little Betty. I've just realized you asked about first steps, and I'm just taking you through the whole thing now.
No,
Um,
it's good to hear the like sort of different stages and the sort of like, especially because it's from a more poetry standpoint, and I feel like the resources about publishing are sort of very like book focused. You get what I mean? But it's nice to hear. So, is there anything you want to wrap up with that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, not at all. I was just going to say, coming back to your original question, like in a practical sense, the first steps were coming up with a name, coming up with a logo, which I drew on a piece of paper on the my window, which I used as a light box, um, and traced and turned that into a PNG, and like getting a website and finding a printer, which we just did by looking in the back of books that we liked and seeing who
Mhm.
published them and going from there. So, and then doing an initial call for submissions. And that's always the way that you get people in the door through submissions, because that's obviously what everyone's excited about is getting published,
Yeah,
and getting the book out there. Um, yeah, so
perfect.
those are our first steps.
Thank you so much for that. Can I pass the question on to now James Reynoldson? Is that okay?
Hiya, Daisy. Yeah, so
Hiya.
in terms of my route into the industry, um, I followed up on an internship. I was fortunate enough to get an editorial sort of internship at at the time it was within Bloomsbury's trade sort of department, but that was like a couple of weeks, and then I sort of stuck around. I followed up. I went to it's a bit. I think it's a bit trickier now, but at the time I went to the HR department and said, are there any other opportunities around? And I just said yes to those opportunities. And that was a really good sort of foundation in to what I do now, which kind of spans the industry. So we work a lot with authors, but we also work a lot with industry professionals, and we look at different types of publishing as well.
Mhm.
And that's kind of so the sort of community platform that I manage stems from the Writers and Artists Yearbook, which has always put people in touch across the industry. If you're looking for practical information about who you might like to contact, so if you're a writer looking to contact an agent, you would consult the yearbook. If you're an editor looking for information about independent presses or about the structure of bigger publishing houses, then you would go there. If you're looking for competitions, events, festivals, etc. So what I do is across the industry. Um, and when I started out at Bloomsbury, I went into lots of different sort of administrative roles. So I did some work in the rights department, specifically around the Churchill archive, which led to me doing a lot of project management of quite a large database as they tried to digitize it. I did some work for Adelaide Cole's Nautical, which was in more of an editorial capacity. And then I moved across after working with the Churchill department. I ended up working with then sort of it was like an early inception of a digital team within Bloomsbury. This would have been about a decade ago, and yeah, Bloomsbury's gone from strength to strength in terms of their digital output now. A lot of their academic products are amazing, and yeah, I was at the start of that, just sort of helping out and getting a pretty broad skill set. And as it happened at that time, the Writers and Artists website had just been developed, and the person that was my boss at the time, she left, and that left an opportunity for me to sort of pick that up, and that's where I've been since.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I think it's really good to hear about sort of saying yes to any opportunities that you have in order to get like a wide range of skills to sort of progress forward and find what you enjoy.
I
So
would
I'm gonna
caveat
go,
that though. I wouldn't say yes to everything,
not
but
everything.
yeah, I would, stay true to yourself, figure out what you want to do, and I think be willing to be pragmatic to help
Mhm.
yourself get there. But I think you don't want to be,
A yes
you got
man.
to, yeah, you can't just say yes, 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 otherwise you'll be overworked.
Exactly. I'll do it in the order I read the names out first. So I'll pass that question over now to Jess Haycox.
Oh, hi everyone. Hi Daisy. So yeah,
Hi.
so I had a bit of a weird way into publishing. I always loved reading, studied at university and did English, worked as a bookseller for a couple of months in my second year, and then ended up working in an aerospace company when I graduated and did that for 4 years as a kind of gaining the skills in marketing and communications and PR. And it was an amazing opportunity just to really get a basic understanding of what being a publicist and being a marketer all kind of involves. It's a lot of photo shoots, it's a lot of events, it's a lot of emails. And after kind of working there for a while, I knew I really wanted to go into publishing. So I started doing some volunteer work with the Society of Young Publishers in their Irish branch. And again, that was amazing to kind of get a sense of what publishing looked like, the different publishers, the different roles, and I knew that's where I kind of wanted to sit. So very luckily, I kind of got my last job through algorithm that my old boss had just posted a job basically looking for people who were interested in publishing and had kind of PR experience. Sent my CV off and just kind of ended up a very kind of lucky fit. So was there as an agency which specialised in nonfiction for 2.5, 3 years, and worked with some amazing authors based all around the world. And I kind of gave them publicity in all kind of forms, whether that is organising interviews on the BBC, whether that is getting them radio coverage, getting them to write articles, blog posts, everything like that, and then moved into doing the same for Harper North.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I will go to our final panelist, Will Mackey.
Hi there. Yeah, well, thank you. So, I mean, I'll just give you a bit of context. So, I work at New Writing North, which is a reading and writing charity based in Newcastle, and we work across the north of England on like a variety of different projects that support writers and encourage reading. And we are not a publisher ourselves, but we work very closely with the publishing industry, and we work, in partnership with several publishers through our work. So one of my key projects, for example, is that I co-lead an MA in publishing with Northumbria University and Hachette UK, one of the kind of five large publishers. So we work on this postgraduate course that sort of that prepares people for a career in publishing. So that's a key part of our work. And I also work on projects like the Northern Writers Awards, which is a talent development program for novelists and poets, screenwriters across the north of England. But yeah, so I mean, I've been working at New Right North for about 10 years now in this kind of talent development role. I'm trying to think of, how I sort of got into it. I guess my career was the early part of my career was directly in publishing. So I was an editor for quite a long time, and I worked initially in London for some publishers in London. But I knew, as much as I love London, I knew pretty early on that I didn't want to live my life there, and I moved to Scotland and lived in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and they're kind of carving out a publishing career outside of London takes a bit of pragmatism. You have to sort of, you look for opportunities. You find ways of working. There aren't as many job opportunities, there aren't as many kind of career progression paths. But I was able to, luckily, fortunately, I was able to kind of have a really good career as an editor. I worked on a lot of different types of books. I worked on like books about education, books about tax. Then I worked on non-fiction books that were to do with sport and true crime, popular music, politics. And then I also worked on a lot of fiction and poetry, which were the kind of the key areas for me that I really loved working on as an editor. And I was fortunate enough to be a poetry editor for 6 or 7 years for a small press, which I loved. It was a great part of my career, and I combined all of that with a lot of freelance editing as well. So which would basically bring in all kinds of kind of different projects. I would take on all kinds of different things, and all of that was great. I think I realized at some point that as much as I love the industry, I was probably happier kind of working kind of adjacent to it. And the sort of turning point for me was when I worked at Scottish Book Trust in Edinburgh, where I was working across their national talent development programs. And in that job, I was working really closely with emerging writers and using a lot of the skills that I developed as an editor, but really kind of working to support people who were bringing their manuscripts, their poetry, and their fiction manuscripts towards publication. And that job was really important for me. And I felt that that work was really meaningful. And I kind of began to sort of realize that being this sort of bridge between talented writers and the publishing industry was something that really suited me personally.
Yeah.
And eventually an opportunity came up at New Way North in Newcastle. And that's where I started, 10 years ago, initially on a kind of ongoing libraries project, which then developed into some other projects and multiple other projects, and the job really sort of grew from there. So yeah, it's been really, a really kind of, I guess, meandering career path, but quite satisfying and interesting
Yeah.
for me, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer, Will. So we'll move on to our second question now. So I understand how much your days can vary quite often, and to give a very brief overview of it can be quite difficult. So as much as you can try, it would be nice. But for the second question is, can you give a brief overview of an average day for you? So I will start with Jess for that question first. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, average day is hard because it can be very, very varied. Like I might
Mm.
be having an event that I'm organizing, like a book launch on one day. The next I could be going and helping or kind of assisting an author who's going on TV, or if they're going on the radio, kind of working with them on that and making sure I'm there to take photos and get the kind of content out around behind the scenes as well. But I would say it is a lot of time it's just kind of thinking about where do we want our books and who's reading them. So I would say quite a lot of it is looking at, what's going on in the media, who's talking about different things, where can we kind of fit into that. A lot of kind of emails back and forth with journalists and pitching ideas and pitching our books as well to them, whether it's getting to reviewers or just kind of features desks. So it's a lot of organization, a lot of kind of keeping your finger on the pulse, knowing what's being discussed, and a lot of yeah, not getting too overwhelmed when your phone buzzes like all the time and that's like 14 different things that you're trying to manage at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If I could now go to James, if that's okay.
Yeah, much like Jess, very difficult to give you a brief appraisal. So it's very varied. As Writers and Artists has developed, we've got a much bigger user base, and there's a lot more things going on. So I suppose my role as a result of that has developed into being the sort of the point of contact between the customers, our users, and that sort of community that's the sort of emerged from the website, and then also the development side. So a general this week I've read a lot of short story competition entries. I have found and formatted content for the website. I have worked with editors to make sure that our editing services are on track. I've been doing some testing of a new section of the website that's hopefully going to launch within the next week or so. or a couple of weeks. And what else? We do a lot of events as well. So this weekend we have an online festival for children that's dedicated to writing and illustrating for children's fiction. So I'm going to be in the background for that. I've been doing all the comms for that, making sure the speakers are set up, much like this sort of call. So this is a busman's holiday for me. But yeah, it's very varied, and which is great. It does sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. It feels like you're spinning, many balls in the air. But yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way, really. I do enjoy the sort of the day, how it varies each day.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Uh, I will now pass it over to Will.
I mean, kind of similarly, right? I think that you try to plan things out. So at the beginning of the week, every week, I plan like my whole week, pretty much hour by hour. And after about 3 hours, that plan is completely irrelevant because something's happened and everything's kind of gone into total, disarray, and I have to just work out what's happening. But yeah, it is quite, it's quite a varied job, I suppose. I mean, it's university semester at the minute, so I'm often preparing a lecture and then delivering a lecture to students. And last week I was with 20 of our students at London Book Fair, which is a kind of key part of the publishing calendar. And so we took the students there to experience that. It's also kind of awards assessment time at the moment, so there is a fair bit of reading in my job still, which is something that I really value because you can get quite a long way from the actual the actual writing, the actual art form that you're involved in sometimes in arts jobs. You can the further you get into the career, the further you're kind of detached from the actual thing that got you into it in the first place. But I do get quite a lot of time for reading still, which is great. Yeah, I work in a team, and I guess one thing that characterizes kind of every day is that we will be kind of communicating with each other all the time. We'll be swapping thoughts and stories, running things by each other, and I think that's a really important part of the job that you do have that kind of discussion that you're kind of open to each other's ideas and I think for me, because I've been in my job quite a long time, I really value what my colleagues have come into it more recently. Think about the ways of doing things. That's something that I've done in a particular way for 10 years. I'm quite keen for them to sort of say if they think that I'm doing it like really badly, and that there's actually a really much more streamlined way that we could be doing this particular task. Yeah, I still talk to writers a lot. Most weeks I'll have at least kind of one or two conversations with a writer where I'm like discussing with them the progress with their manuscript. So I enjoy that. And then they've just to be sort of realistic about it as well, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of administrative tasks. I spend a lot of time staring at budgets on spreadsheets and trying to kind of make them work. Like financial reporting. I do a lot of fundraising as well, fundraising applications, and lots of preparing for events as well, like in-person events and online events is a big part of my job too. But yeah, you kind of work out that sort of balance between things as much as you can.
Yeah.
But there are things that are kind of essential to do,
Yeah.
like emails, and there are things that like kind of sort of you really love doing, which for me is the stuff that involves the writers and that sort of discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then last we have Amy.
Hiya. Yeah, so kind of similar to a lot of what's been said, because we're a small press. Often with a small poetry press, it's one or two people doing everything. So it's kind of jobs that might be, I don't know, five different people in a bigger operation. But yeah, so I edit, so I work directly with poets, working on their manuscripts together. That's my favorite bit, and that's the bit where my heart is. Um, I also do the book design, so that's the typesetting and the cover design, which I really enjoy that as well. And then slightly further down my list of preference is the marketing, the publishing coordination, communicating with bookshops. I mean, that's really lovely actually. But um, yeah, arranging events. So I've got a brilliant partner, Jake Wildhall, who like programs our kind of events calendar for the year. But then I kind of support that process with some of the marketing, and I do some of the kind of planning with for bookshop events also. And then there's kind of really dull but necessary stuff like writing grant applications. Uh, we took on a finance officer a couple of years ago, which has kind of saved my life, which has been great because that's not my skill set. And like at the start, I was doing that, and that was just a bad idea. Um, and then obviously reading submissions, but we're very streamlined with that, so we're very limited. We have very short submissions windows, and then read everything, and then pick stuff from that. And we're usually working like 18 months or 2 years in advance from taking a manuscript to having it published. Um, and then there's kind of partnerships as well, and job things that are not technically part of your job, but obviously that you're doing because we're part of an ecosystem. So on Sunday, I was at Unislam in Birmingham, which was amazing, and I was judging their grand final, which was great because it's loads of young poets, kind of forging the starts of their writing careers and their performing careers. That was really exciting. Um, yeah, maybe that's. I mean, there's definitely more jobs. There's a lot of admin. There's a lot
Yeah.
of emails. Um, yeah,
No, it's
those are
nice.
the
It's nice to hear sort of it's a wide range of stuff that you have to do rather than like over and over consistently. So I'll move on to the next question, which again, I understand how difficult it is to answer these questions quite briefly when you could honestly talk about them. So this question is, what experiences do you think are valuable to have when applying to work in the publishing sector? Obviously, again, it's hard to pinpoint, but if I could start with Will, what do you think sort of experiences are valuable to have, whether that's like work experiences or certain skill sets?
Yeah, I mean, I think that publishing is there's a lot in publishing. So it's a really wide industry with a lot of different types of roles in it, and obviously multiple, almost infinite different kinds of books that you can work on, but different types of publications within the industry. So there are loads of different experiences that are relevant to working in the industry. So it's important, to value what you've done in the kind of in jobs that you've had, voluntary work in education, because all of that is relevant to working anywhere. But in publishing particularly, where there's jobs in editorial, production, there's jobs in sales, marketing, rights, there's new kind of jobs in things like audio. It's a real kind of universe of different possibilities, I think. Um, so yeah, all of those experiences are important. I guess one thing that I think is really vital is reading, and it's one of the kind of great kind of joys of being alive, I think, reading. And obviously essential for people who want to work in publishing to be readers. And I think there's an element there also believing in the thing that you love to read. So if you love reading poetry, if you love reading romance fiction, really kind of hold on to that. I was really in fact like when I was early in my career, I loved reading poetry, and I held on to that. I didn't have the opportunity to work on poetry collections until much, much later. And people were giving me books on financial markets to edit and things like that. And all of that was fine. It was relevant experience, but I kept hold of the thing that I really loved. So don't lose that. But yeah, I just think there are so many kind of useful experiences that you can have that are relevant and transferable to this industry.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will next go to James, if that's okay.
Yeah, I wrote down reading with an exclamation mark, because it is amazing. For I work with a lot of writers, much like I'm sure Will does as well. A lot of writers that come to our site are sort of like making that first step into taking it seriously and thinking, okay, I want to develop this idea. Um, so many people don't read contemporary fiction and non-fiction, and I think that can, it's just it's a given because you're going to be better um, adjusted to what you want to do. I think you're going to have a better eye for what opportunities are available. My next thing that I wrote down, and there will be a more erudite way to say this, but I'm going to go with, I think you've got to be a Swiss Army knife. I think it's like publishing is a like Will said, publishing's multifaceted. There's so many different roles available, and I think you've you've got to be willing to be pragmatic and jump on an opportunity, learn a new skill, yeah, become better connected in terms of that ecosystem, meet people, do those, and anybody that's joining this sort of call tonight are on their way to doing that sort of thing. That's the right approach. And then one other thing that I sort of scribbled down as I was thinking about this earlier was, and it's really interesting because it's come up in almost everybody's come at this in slightly different ways on the panel. There are so many publishing adjacent roles out there, and they can be the key really to you building your skill set, to you finding a niche, and for you to having that, that bit of experience that makes you the right fit for the role that comes up. So when I said earlier, you need to say yes, and you need to be willing, you need to be pragmatic, I also did clarify by saying that I think you need to have an end goal in sight, and then that'll help you finesse the sort of opportunities you zone in on. And just because it's not working at, one of the bigger publishers, that doesn't mean that the experience that you're gaining is any less. In fact, it probably makes you stand out more.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I will now go to Amy with the same question. So, what experiences do you believe are valuable when applying to work in the publishing sector?
Okay, so I'm gonna give a poetry specific answer, I think, because I think there's such variance depending on kind of what genre you're working in, and that every kind of category comes with its own world a little bit. And poetry, it's such a small market. So I think the most important thing really is being active in the community, because poetry, for the most part, sells to poets. It's other poets buying and reading poetry, much more so than I think maybe anything else. If it was only novelists reading novels, then it would be a completely different landscape. But with poetry, to a certain extent, that's the case, and a lot of sales happen at events as well. So, kind of being part of the live scene. Um, there's so many different kind of touch points within poetry, from kind of development schemes to magazines, online magazines, workshop groups, all kinds of events and communities. And it's really vital to be involved with that and to kind of grow your community and your network. So that, yeah, that would be my number one thing, I think. And well, reading is number one. You know, that's as James said, that's a given. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. Just before I move on to Jess, I just want to say if you have any more questions, please do put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. There is a button at the bottom of your screen, and we can answer some of your questions at the end. So again, taking that question to Jess now, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's covered it really well. So I think, yeah, that kind of passion for reading, and getting out there and knowing what's going on and what's being published and who's where, is so important, because it's not only just shows that passion, but it gives you such a kind of confidence and a knowledge, I think, that really stands out. I think, like, I guess from my job perspective, and kind of within that, I think in terms of experiences, and it's kind of builds on, I guess, what James said, of every experience gives you something and you get a skill from that. So whether it is whether you're working in a shop or whether you're working in a cafe at the moment or you're working as a teaching assistant or any kind of job which is whether it's in publishing or adjacent or kind of as far as it can be, I think there's so much you can take from that. If you have dealt with a very busy Saturday shift at Christmas, you will absolutely have so many skills of being able to manage people and keep a smile on your face when things are getting difficult and having good organization and timekeeping, which in whether it's an entry level job or you're all the way at the top, those are so vital to have and really do kind of stand you in good stead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'll go on to our last question now. So it is sort of on the other side of things. So we've talked a lot about how to get into publishing and the skills it takes and the sort of opportunities that are available. But sort of now I want to talk about can you share sort of recommendations or sort of like uh tips maybe? I'm not sure. Like it's a very like broad question again, but any recommendations for people who want to get published? So could I start with Amy on that one? Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so with poetry, it's often when I say simple, I don't mean that it's easy, but the path is maybe less mysterious than in some areas of publishing because a lot of the time it's just looking on a publisher's website and especially with poetry where small publishers are such a kind of vital part of the sector, a lot of small publishers will have open submissions windows, or some of them are just open all the time where you can just send in your work. The bigger publishers that do poetry, so Bloomsbury, Faber, all of those, it's often better to come through an agent. So if you're looking to get your collection published by a big press, I would go for an agent. But if it's your first publication, it's probably a better bet to go for a small press and kind of make your name there before you then set your sights at a kind of bigger publisher. Um, and with that, it's often just like reading what their submissions guidelines are and following them. And they'll say what they're looking for and, read loads, but also look at who's publishing the books that you love, and then read more of their output and see where you feel like your work aligns with,
Mhm.
and pay attention to that and pay attention to what they're asking for in their submissions guidelines. Look up who their editor is, know their name. Um, there's so much information online and on social media where you can really get a sense of what a press is all about, what their ethos is, um, so that when you're submitting work, they know that you've kind of thought about why your work might fit there rather than just, I've got this story to tell and I want it out there. Obviously, you need that desire and that passion, but also it needs to feel relevant to the publisher. And you don't have to kind of sell yourself in your cover letter. I know often people worry about that and they get really hung up on the cover letter and what to say. Honestly, your work, it's just about the work, and your work will sell itself if it's ready. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
don't worry about kind of trying to write the perfect cover letter, but make sure that your work's ready and send it to beta readers or mentors or just friends for feedback so that when you are submitting it, it's kind of, had a few rounds and it's as
Mm.
edited and as ready as it can be.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Rose, I'm conscious of time. What would you like me to do currently? Would you like me to continue asking?
Thank you for checking in on that, and thank you everyone for your answers. So we've had a couple of great questions come through the Q&A, and I think we can maybe start with the first one, which was, what are some examples of publishing adjacent roles? Do you want to direct that, Daisy?
Yes, I will. James, can I direct that to you?
Oh, I said it, didn't I? Yeah, like literary agencies. Um, when we do we tend to do quite a lot of careers events, and so many people are looking for sort of roles in editorial, and it's hard getting in as an editorial assistant somewhere. But if you consider the amount of reading that agents now have to do, you're going to get a really good foundation there, I would say, and it might be a little bit less, it might not be as competitive. And then, yeah, a bit like what Jess was saying as well about, you know, uh, working in a bookshop, or, you've got an eye on the industry, what's being, what people are asking for. You're looking at the covers all the time. I'm sure other people on this panel will have other examples, but there's two big ones, I think. And then, yeah, Will also mentioned like the sort of the admin, which is
Yeah.
the bane of our lives. But there are so many roles in like finance and I don't know, sales, etc.
Did anyone have anyone else, any other job roles they'd like to put forward?
I think have a look at kind of festivals as well. I think
Yeah.
there's the like event side of things where there are so many literary festivals, there are so many volunteer positions, like always looking for people to kind of get that experience, and that gives you really good access to authors, gives you kind of gets to know the publishers and what they are bringing to the festivals and to the events. So I think, have a look at those. Slightly adjacent, I guess, still within that kind of publishing world, but
Oh, I
looking.
have another one. I
Oh,
have
go.
another one. Sorry. Publishing's changing all the time. There's so much video and audio content now
Mm,
that's kind of it's in demand. So maybe you have a skill there.
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Did Will or Amy have anything to add to that, or are we able to move to a different question?
I mean, there are a few kind of types of jobs that are related to publishing and work kind of in that kind of world that's connected to the industry. So there's the kind of job that I do, like talent development, writer development organizations, of which there are a few across the country. Like there's New Writing North, there's a the National Centre for Writing in Norwich. There's organisations like that, and yeah, absolutely things like festivals, and then there's kind of literary prizes as well. So there's an ecology of types of industry around publishing as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'll move on to our next Q&A question, which I think is quite a hot topic at the moment. And it's about how much AI used on a daily basis within the industry and within the office? And is it possible to work in the industry without using AI? I think there's a lot of concern about creativity and its way it's like linked with AI. Now, does anyone have like a straight away have an answer to this that they want to contribute? Or do you want me to pass it around again?
We have very, I guess, strict kind of boundaries, not in terms of what we would and wouldn't use it for, because
Hmm.
like obviously there's issues of creative copyright, and writers' work being used or kind of um, feeding into it without their consent. And also I've seen cases of um, where it's been used in marketing, and it's kind of, changed people's faces a little bit, or kind of reworked someone's ethnicity, or like um I've seen too many kind of dodgy cases of it. So we will only use it for kind of really kind of back end tasks. So, you know, writing kind of internal documents, or
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe a prize submission where it's just kind of helped to generate that first sort of template or structure things. But no, yeah, we wouldn't use it for anything creative. Although, having said that, I will caveat that by saying that while, for example, we wouldn't accept a manuscript that was written by AI, clearly,
Hmm.
there are cases of writers using AI, in really interesting ways where it's kind of acknowledged and part of their process. So, for example,
Hmm.
Silver. whose collection we're publishing next month, who wrote My Child the Algorithm, which was written in part through AI, but that's such a kind of conscious part of the experimentalism of the
Yeah,
um, but yeah, we wouldn't use it for anything where it's going to be passed off as creative output.
perfect. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Potentially James or Jess or Will. Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Amy gave a really great answer actually.
Mhm.
I guess that it is something, if you're asking about whether it's going to be in the industry, I think it's something that is the industry is going to have to adapt to, and in the process of adapting to it at the minute. But sorry, it's going on.
It's all good.
Uh, I guess there are a lot of concerns, obviously around kind of authors' copyright and copyright infringements, and how people are not being kind of rewarded for their work being used by AI. And I guess the thing that the industry has to get itself around is like how you define the kind of ethical use of AI, and how the whole kind of definitions around, as Amy was talking about what's operational and what's creative and how that's defined, how you protect authors and how you protect other people involved in the publishing process, like designers and illustrators. Um, so yeah, I think it's really important for all organizations in the industry to sort of have a kind of policy which outlines how they're going to approach AI, and where those ethical boundaries lie.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have another Q&A question that also similarly links to this, and it's, do you think it's essential to run your CV through a AI when sending out applications so they can pass AI screening processes? So I'm not sure whether this is relevant, whether there is screening processes in place. I'm not sure whether, James, have you got something to say or?
No, anecdotally, we did an event with a recruitment consultant, a recruitment
Mhm.
consultant was part of the panel, and they were saying they're seeing, it's difficult because there are so many AI generated. You can tell if they're AI generated, or more to the
Mhm.
point, you can tell those that aren't,
Mhm.
and their personality comes through, and it makes for a stronger application. And it's interesting. There was a report. I mean, again, anecdotally, there was something on the bookseller website the other week about agent submissions being there's them seeing an increase in the number of AI covering letters, say.
Mhm.
And again, the message there is that if you write it yourself, you know it's a better application because it's a better submission because you're applying to be an author
Yeah.
and your voice needs to come through.
I can understand that. I'll move on to our probably last Q&A question as we come to wrapping up time. And it's, most publishing opportunities are down south. How am I best to break into the industry living up north? And I'll sort of direct this to Will, since you are involved with New Writing North.
Yeah, although I think Jess could answer it too.
Jess as well,
The
sorry.
one who's working kind of. Do you want to go first, Jess?
Yeah, go for it. I think it's like I know I mentioned them before, the Society of Young Publishers. I think they are like through my own experience, a really amazing organization. I think anecdotally, they do such good work in terms of kind of
Mm.
understanding what's going on in the industry, and they have lots of different chapters. So they have ones in the north, they've got ones in Ireland, Scotland, London as well, and then UK wide. So I think looking at things like that is really good to kind of getting a sense of the jobs that are out there as well. Obviously, as we've said, it's like it is there are more job opportunities in the south, but I mean, as Will could probably attest to as well, the fact that you've been in Scotland and Newcastle, there are lots of pockets, and I think we're all kind of working together to try and make the industry more diverse and more inclusive regionally, ethnicity, everything, just to make it kind of bring in the brightest and best, and the best books as well, because it does not, wherever you're publishing books, it doesn't matter by the boundaries.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that there are obviously fewer publishing jobs in the north of England and fewer jobs outside of London and the southeast. I mean, but it's not impossible, and I think it's worth remembering that it's difficult, but there are possibilities here in the north. I think that the decentralization of some of the large publishers like Hachette, who have opened offices in Newcastle and Sheffield and in Manchester, and also other parts of England and Scotland. That's really such a promising move, and also HarperCollins with Harper Northridge S Works. That's a really significant investment in the north as a place where publishing can happen, because there's absolutely no reason why publishing can't happen in the north of England and in Scotland. The reasons that it grew up around London are archaic reasons that don't exist anymore. Publishing can absolutely happen anywhere as an industry. Small publishers can be founded where any part of the country, and there is a really thriving scene of independent publishers in the north as well, which I think is worth people researching. So publishers like Carcanet, Blood Axe, the kind of leading poetry publishers, really, that have been going for like 50 years in Blood Axe's case, and publishers like Blue Moose and Comma Press. So there are and other stories as well who are amazing, based near Sheffield and do kind of literary work and work in translation. So there, yeah, it's challenging, but it's not impossible.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we've got time to squeeze one last Q&A question in, and that is there any particular software people who are looking to go into production should be paying attention to or should know how to use beforehand when hoping to work as a production assistant or an entry level production role? So that was quite a long one. I apologize. So it's sort of like software. So how to what to know how sorry, my words are all scrambled. Um, what they should know how to use. So has anyone got anything off the top of their head?
Ugh. I don't know. I mean, there's some software that's used in publishing, things uh, like Biblio, InDesign. I'm not too familiar with what might be used in production roles.
Okay, I'll
Um,
go to
Amy,
uh
Amy's maybe got a better
yeah,
handle on that.
that's what I was about to say. Amy, I saw you trying to talk and I didn't mean to.
No, no, not at all. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say InDesign really, but then I was just one trying to work out if we're talking about production in terms of the kind of production of the physical product of the books, but because there's obviously production in terms of events and
Yeah, it wasn't clear. I'm really sorry about that one.
no, no, not at all. But like the thing I can answer on is for sure InDesign, which is what I use for the typesetting, the cover design. InDesign and Photoshop would be for creating the books. I mean, there's software um, that I know will be used for kind of sharing metadata with booksellers if you're getting into that kind of trade marketing side of things. Although to be honest, we just use spreadsheets for everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry about without the clarification. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it more. Um, I think it's coming to the end of our time now, Rose, isn't it? Would you like me to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you, Daisy. Just before we do our wrap up and thanks, I want to mention that for every Creative Careers panel event, we're doing a draw for one of the attendees to win a £25 National Book Token voucher. And the winner of this draw was Romilly. So, Romilly, thank you so much for being here. And I'll be in touch after tonight to send you your voucher. But back over to you, Daisy, to wrap things up.
Perfect. I just want to say a massive thank you to all the people who have attended tonight and all the panelists for being here. You have genuinely given us so much more information that I think isn't too accessible, especially like when I was in secondary school. Publishing, I kind of only really learnt through First Story. And so to have this opportunity to ask you questions about it and to put like a spotlight on things. So to each and every one of you, a big thank you. And also to Rose for managing a YCC Young Creative Collective and all the hard work you do for us. I just want to say thank you. So We have a evaluation link that will be put in the webinar chat. So Rose will put that up now. If you could please fill it out, that would be great. And thank you so much for all of your time. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks so much, Daisy.
You.